In this next segment, I'm going to show you how to make the poppy bud. So these are going to be the type buds of the poppy, and so they're very characteristic. They're sort of slightly fuzzy, furry looking. And so there's two sizes of this on the mold. So obviously this is the small size, and then this is the large size bud. Okay, now when we make this, we're going to use the same wire and floral tape for both. That is going to be, this is 26 gauge wire. Again, it doesn't matter whether you use green or white wire here. I'm just going to take some floral tape, and we're going to use some half-width floral tape here, and I'm going to make a floral tape bud 3 times hook times 3. Okay, so on the end of the wire here. So you're going to take your tapes and go around once. So 1, 2, 3. This is a nice soft wire, so then you're just going to bend it over with your fingers, and then 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to add 2 extra 26 gauge wires. Okay, and just going to tape down. So you're just going to get this small little floral tape bud on the end of the wire. Again, I'm doing these on full length wires because typically, poppies are often, especially like the English wild field poppy, this is often, you see these in watercolors or arrangement of silk flowers or things like that used with long stems. So you can just obviously come down and just trim the end of the wire as needed. Okay, so obviously you'd prepare as many of these as you need, obviously buds. Now when we do the small bud, we're going to start off with a number 6 small size ball of paste. Okay, so we're going to take a number 6 small. That means on your size guide, that's actually going to go through the number 6 hole. So it just goes through the number 6 hole. All right, so that would be, I'm going to take a little tiny bit again of vegetable fat shortening just into the cavity. We'll also do this on the large one as well. And you're going to just take your paste. I'm going to put a little touch of cornstarch onto this, and I'm going to roll that into a little bit of a bean shape, and we're just going to press this into the mold. You can use your cosmetic sponge here, and this will just, the number 6 small will fill the mold up level. So this is done very similar to the way I showed the 2-part rose cone, my pine cones, several other pieces that I've made. So then we're going to take a little bit of egg white or gum glue, and just going to brush that onto just one side of the floral tape bud, and that side that you put the glue on, you're going to press that into the mold. So go into the mold like this. Okay, I'm just going to press that in, so this will like sort of disappear into the mold fairly flush. Just flex the mold and you take this out. All right, so this is going to give you your half bud. This also means when you lay it flat, because the bud is pushed into the paste there, it will sit nice and flat. Now when you do the large size one, you will use exactly the same technique. This is going to be a regular number 6 size. So 6 small for the small, and then regular number 6 size. So again, 1/3 below, 2/3 above. All right, it's going to be used for the larger one. So again, just a little cornstarch in there. I've also got a little bit of, this is going to give you this sort of nice, almost like slightly hairy texture that you have on here. Okay, again, so you're going to put a little bit of egg white or glue just on one side. The reason I only do it on one side is then when you press your finger on the side, it doesn't have the glue, it's not going to be all sticky. Just going to push that into the middle here, like so. You see that wants to stay within the perimeter of the mold. All right, I'm just going to flex your mold. This will come out, this will give you the larger one. All right, now these would need to dry for about 2 to 3 hours, all right, at room temperature. You could put them into your food dehydrator for about an hour. All right, and then once they're dry, so obviously these are some that I've got dry. Now I want to make sure that these are dry because this is very much like my pine cone. When we do the second part here, we're going to make sure that the top part is dry so you can press nice and firmly. Okay, and then you're just going to duplicate this. So now we're going to go back to a number 6 small. So once those are dry, I'm going to just put a little bit of, and then we're going to pop that into the mold here. And then generally I want to use something a little bit stronger, so like piping gel or super bond, or even softened paste, like on the actual, when I did, for example, like on my antlers, I took some of the leftover green paste and softened it with a little bit of water. You could do that, but I'm just using here a little bit of piping gel. It's just a little bit stronger than using just straight, egg white or glue, gum glue. So then you see I'm going to press the second part on top. So when you take this out, so then you're just going to mold this around. All right, just again, try not to squash this, okay? If you do have a little seam on there, you can take a pair of scissors and just trim that if you've sort of overfilled the mold. But generally, you're just going to just mold this around. And I'm going to take my little companion tool, and on the side that the soft part, I'm just going to use the companion tool like this. And what this does, it just sort of gives you that little feathered. You see how I'm just blending this to the edge there. So you just use your companion tool needle end just to do that on the two sides, okay? Now generally what you do is you hold this with the seam here, and then you're going to just sort of bend this over your thumb like this. So this will then sort of be the characteristic way that this grows, you see? All right, so they sort of have that bent over. So obviously the seam is really not visible because it's also on the edge as well. And then when you do the large one, exactly the same. So obviously this is regular number 6 size. A little bit of corn starch into there. I press this into the mold here. Again, just a little bit of, as I said, piping gel, or as I said, some super bond or softened paste here, just a little bit stronger. So just press this nice and firmly, just flex the mold, so it'll come out beautifully. So you get this nice sort of almost like furry texture on here. And then just on the side that is the soft side, you're just going to blend just with your needle tool end, just going to blend around the edge here. So you see what it does, it just helps to blend those two together like that. And remember, you just hold this and you just hold it. So this is where the seam is. I hold with my thumb and I'm just going to bend it over the curve of my thumb. So what you're going to do is you're going to get this nice sort of natural look to the bud. All right. The reason why we wouldn't use pliers is pliers are going to kink it and you're going to get like a horrible angle in there. So you want this nice natural top piece to the buds. Those of course would just dry, and then once those are dry, we're going to dust those a little later on. In the next segment, I'm going to show you how to do a sort of almost like a bud starting to open. So now we're going to move on to the buds that are going to start to open. So these are really a nice sort of piece to the poppy, sort of just helps to give realism. So you've got the tight bud we've just done, and these are the actual poppies emerging from their little calyx. So when we do this, we're going to basically prepare a floral tape bud exactly the same as the tight bud. So that is 3 times hook times 3. The only difference is here we're on a slightly stronger wire because these are a little bit bigger, a little heavier. So you're going to take your floral tape, you're going to go on 20, so this is a 24 gauge wire instead of a 26, all right? So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, fold it over, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to add 2 more 24 gauge wires. Okay, so just 1 gauge up. Remember, floral tape wires, the higher the number, the thinner the wire. So 18 is the strongest wire I typically use, and 30 the thinnest. And they also go in even numbers. So 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30. So we're going to tape down to the bottom. Remember, green or white wire can be used here. Okay, now I've already got one prepared here. All right, so these will both be exactly the same. So now what we're going to do is going to prepare your paste. All right, so for the small one, we're going to use a number 6 size. So this wants to be regular number 6 size, obviously 1/3 below, 2/3 above. This would be made in the same color as your petals, okay? So obviously this is the more tomatoey color, the orangey red for like the English field poppy, okay? And that's what I'm going to use. So we're going to take the number 6, and I'm just going to take a little bit of shortening into this. Now I'm going to just brush a little bit of egg white onto my wire here, just a little tiny bit. Okay, I'm just going to pop this into the center here, like so. Just going to mold this around. Okay, so just going to mold this around, and then just use a little bit of cornstarch on your fingers. And then we're actually going to use the bud mold as a sort of a gauge for the shape, all right? So just make it to the basic shape. So what you're going to do here, you're almost going to put it into here, and I'm just going to use my fingers and just press around the edge because I almost want like a slight rim here, right? Not really pressing outside the mold, but just going to press one side, and then you turn it over and you're going to press on the other side. So you see you're actually making it the same shape as the small bud. All right, so you'll actually get almost like the little line there from the mold. okay, because that's where the calyx is going to sit. Now, because this is actually represents a flower petal, we want to sort of fairly heavily texture this. So you're going to use your companion tool. I'm just going to sort of texture from the top coming down. I would do the same on the other side. And this will just sort of come down here like this. And this will give you your texture on your bud. Okay, so I'm going to do the texture onto your bud here and here. All right, so that will be the small one. And then the large one, we're going to use a number 7 small size. Okay, so this is going to be number 7 that actually goes through the number 7 hole. So that would be a small number 7. Okay, and then this one we're going to use same wire. Okay, and then this one we're going to use obviously the large cavity to make this into. So again, we're going to take your little bit of glue onto here. And so typically for flower making, I use egg white. I always have used egg white, but some people use edible glue or gum glue, you know, Tyler's glue. It's really whatever you prefer. I will say that egg white typically I found sets a little bit more quickly than some of the gum glues and edible glues. But as I said, it's very much personal choice, okay? So you're going to make this into a nice shape. And then again, we're going to now take this mold here. Now, again, I'm going to just, if your paste is a little sticky, you can just pop a little, you know, put a little cornstarch onto there. And again, remember, you can also put just a little tiny bit of shortening into there as well. So very much like what we just did on the previous bud, we're going to press this into the mold one side, and then going to turn it over until you almost get that slight rim, which we want, okay? Now, you can either, what we want to do is we want to thin out the top part of this. So you can actually either do that in the mold, so you can actually just press that around the top of the mold there like so. So when you take it out, you see how you're going to have this rim, or you can actually just do that with your fingers. So the sort of top half of this wants to just be thinned out. So you see how you're actually making a thinned out part here, just on the top half of this. Now then I'm going to take this with my Dresden tool, and on the edge of the pad, I'm going to use my Dresden tool here, and I'm just going to use my Dresden tool on its side, and I'm going to do like a little ruffle. All right, so using my Dresden tool like this, you will also do this on the other side as well. Okay, so you're going to sort of frill that top part of this, and then what I do here is I'm going to use my fingers, and I'm almost going to make like little tiny pleats here. So I'm just going to pleat this together. So this will actually give you this sort of pleated top piece on the poppy. Okay, and then you're going to take your tool here and just going to texture down from the top to the bottom. All right, so this looks like a little poppy emerging, because poppies, if you've ever seen a poppy open, it's like almost like red tissue paper, really, really fine tissue paper, and then they just sort of unopen, just basically just sort of almost open like a tissue. And then the other thing is that the calyx, which is this part here, at that point, when the actual flower emerges from this detaches from the flower. So this is very much like, say, southern magnolia is the same. So there are several flowers that have a calyx on, because the calyx is actually the bud, when the bud is tied like this. And then when it opens, this actually just falls off. It just detaches from the flower. So the actual poppy flower doesn't have a calyx, okay? And so you'd make this one here. You let these dry, okay? So let these dry for, again, a couple of hours. So you see, this is the two different buds, all right? So you can see this one here. All right, and now we're going to move on to, so once those have dried, going to move on to actually make the little calyx. Now here, we're going to make it like a little pod, all right? So again, we're going to put just a little tiny bit of vegetable shortening into here. And then we're going to use, so for the small one, we're going to use number 5 small, okay? So we're going to use number 5 small, so that wants to go through the hole. And what you're going to do here, you're going to just take that, going to make it into a little sausage shape, just dust a little touch of cornstarch onto it, and you're going to put it into the mold like this. Just press it in with your finger, and I'm actually going to use a balling tool. Now with your balling tool, you're going to do this. So you're just going to go back and forward like that, just gently. So what it's actually doing is almost like lining it, like, for example, like a bit like a tart shell. And then when you take this out of the mold here, when it comes out of the mold, you see how you're going to get this texture, but it's almost going to be like a nutshell, you see? So you're just going to pop that onto your cosmetic sponge, and then you'll take the next one. So you're just going to do this in the same way, because we don't want to fill this mold up. We're just lining it like almost like if we had pastry, in a tart shell. So we're going to pop this into here, just going to press this in to the mold. And again, you're just going to use your ball tool here. Just move back and forward a couple of times. And then when you flick this out, come out the mold very easily. All right, so you're just going to put it on the edge of your cosmetic sponge like this. Then using a little bit of glue, egg white, I'm going to brush that down about 2/3 of the way down. And then just a little bit around the bottom, okay? And when you attach it, so this is why this needs to be dry. Now where you have almost a seam, all right, from the edge of the rim of the mold, that's where the calyx is going to go. So what you do here is you're just going to press this on like this. Sorry, just use my soft one by accident. There we go. All right, so that's why you can see that you want, so this is the soft one here, this is the dry one here. There we go. So you're going to use this, so this means you can press nice and firmly. Just going to press that on. You see, so the little seed would go, like the calyx will go there. I'm going to do it the same directly opposite here, like so. And you want those to touch and just mold around the bottom. You see, that is how you make the small poppy bud, okay? All right, again, when you bend this, you're going to hold it so that the calyx is towards you over your thumb. So again, your calyx will come down like this. This will give you a poppy. Now, some varieties of poppy, the bud can be more round, all right, like on the Himalayan and Oriental style poppy. But as I said, this is sort of more the classic sort of field poppy, English poppy. So again, we're going to take now, just showing you the large one here. Going to make that into a little sausage. Going to press this on. So as I explained earlier on, the poppy has many little separate components. So, you know, a lot of these things need to dry. So this is where you can just sort of, there's no set order of how you have to make this flower. You know, like in some of my flowers, like for example with the sunflower, you have to make the center first because that has to dry before you can put the petals on. But here, it doesn't matter whether you start up with leaves or buds or whatever, but things that need to dry, obviously you can do first and then you can come back to those a little later. And then this will be the large one here. And this is just this is, as I said, regular number 5 size. You can just use your, as I said, just use your companion tool. Just take that out. But remember, it's going to, see I've got this like furry texture on there. And you're just going to turn this upside down. And then the last one. So this, as I said, is a regular number 5 size. So you have 5 small for the tight bud, for the small bud. And then you have a number 5 for the bigger bud. And you're going to put this in. And again, we're going to just use your tool here. Just going to pop this out. And again, we're going to now take your egg white. It's going to come about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way down, just a little bit of egg at the bottom. And again, where your seam is, all right, so where that almost like seam is from there, that is going to go down onto the calyx. See, I do this on a cosmetic sponge because it compresses around very, very easily. And then you can do this on the other side here. And that just compresses around there, like so. So you see how so this is sort of almost like a bud emerging from the outside, okay? And that's sort of how you would do. And again, just going to use you can do it towards you or away from you, but just over your finger or your thumb, you're going to get this nice sort of natural shape here. So you can see the sort of the buds, you know, and then you've got obviously your little tiny buds here as well. So these are sort of, so you see all of these are going to look really, really attractive at the top of the poppy, you know, so it gives it that very natural sort of realistic look, okay? So those are going to be our, as I said, tight buds, and then we have the sort of semi-open buds, so the larger buds. These will be ready for coloring, and they don't take, of course, take long to dry, the little seed pods, the outside parts, because they're fairly thin. Next segment, we come back, I'm going to show you how to make the seed head, and then we'll be moving on to the foliage. So now we're going to move on to the poppy seed head. This is the sort of the center part of the poppy here. All right, and now these can be made in pale green or can be made in a cream color. These also, a lot of times people take these as dried flowers and spray them gold, for example, for a Christmas arrangement. So if you were going to do them gold, you could start off, make this in yellow. If you're going to do silver, start off with gray. But as I said, in a more natural environment, you'd either use it like this for almost like a live one, and then a dried one you would use in a cream color. Now the only difference here is if obviously you're going to do the cream color one, you want to use white floral tape on the wire. Now we're going to start off with a 20 gauge wire. All right, it's going to start off with a 20 gauge wire here. All right, this is a stronger wire, and we're going to use your floral tape. So we're going to go around here 5 times hook and then 10. Okay, so we're going to go around the end of this. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to hook it. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Then you're going to take two now 22 gauge wires. So we have a 20 gauge wire here and then two 22 gauge wires. Just almost you need the support of the 20 gauge wire. One of those will be enough. And then, so you can obviously have a little bit of movement in it. And you're just going to just tape down to the bottom there. So 5 times hook times 10 on the 20 gauge wire, and then add two 22 gauge wires. Remember, green or white, doesn't matter here. Now, of course, if you're going to do the cream one, you would use white floral tape, and of course, white wire would be best, an optional, option there. Now we've done that. So what I'm going to do first is I need some paler green. So this is the green I use for the obviously poppy center, the poppy buds, the little husk and things like that. I'll be using also for the poppy leaves. But for this seed pod, because it's a little bit of a bluey green color, like a eucalyptus color, I want it slightly lighter. So just take equal amounts of white flower and petal paste, gum paste, and just mix those together. And this is going to basically make a pale green. Okay, so you just mix these together to make a paler green. So it's just equal amounts of the two products. Now you're going to measure off a number 11 small. So we're going to take a number 11 small. That wants to just fit through the hole, all right? So just as I said, number 11, but wants to just go through the hole. So it's sort of just the right size then. You're going to take your little ball of paste. Again, we're going to just use a little tiny bit of release here. Now this is a deep mold, all right? So again, just using a little tiny bit of vegetable shortening onto here. Just going to put a little touch of flour cornstarch onto here. All right, and just going to press this into the mold. Just make sure you get that in the top part of the mold here, like so. All right, so if you make it so it just goes through, then you can just sort of press this down, just to make sure. You can use your cosmetic sponge for that as well, because it wants to be nice and level. Going to take your wire. All right, so with wire, I'm going to put a little bit of glue onto this. Now again, I'm using something a little bit stronger, so you can use a little bit of piping gel or some super bond on there, just because it's a little bit bigger. Now when I put this in, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go in at an angle. So I'm actually going to go in at an angle like this into the pod, and then I'm going to sort of almost like push it in there like that, and then bring my paste over the top. So I'm actually embedding it in at an angle and then into its little channel like that. All right, so you see how that's going to fill up the mold. Now because this is a longer wire, sometimes that will sort of put a little bit of pressure on it, but as I said, usually I'm just going to take this out of the mold here. All right, so I'm going to take this out. Let's make sure that that's level here. All right, so you're going to get this beautiful seed head. And then we're going to just take your companion tool, the pointed end. You're going to make a series of little holes around here. So you're just gonna, because if obviously we'd had this on the mold, they would fill up with paste. So you're just gonna do like a little series. So what I'm doing is I'm doing them between the ribbon, okay? So you're gonna do those between the ribbon, and you're just gonna then just make sure that that's flat, and then you're gonna dry this, again, air dry or in a food dehydrator. Again, 4 to 5 hours, probably with room temperature. That's gonna depend a lot on humidity level and things. 2 to 3 hours in a food dehydrator on 115, which is 45 degrees centigrade. So once you've done that, you're going to have your dry version. So then you're going to then repeat the process again. All right, so you're going to repeat the process. Now, just remember, this is very much like I make my pine cones. All right, now, for those of you who haven't watched my pine cone, for example, the reason why we wouldn't make both parts while they're soft is now if we did the second part, when you try and press this, you're going to just lose the veining and detail on here. So it's much, much better when you're doing things that are double-sided, that you actually, like my lily buds and things like that, that you do this technique, okay? So you just have to plan a little bit so you'll have a little bit of time for one part to dry. All right, so then you're just going to fill this up. Make sure that comes to the top. All right, and as I said, generally when you're putting two parts together, so just like I showed making the bud, I used a little bit of something stronger. As I said, it's like when I do my pine cones, you can use, Super Bond, which is a sort of a strong glue like this. You can use, as I said, piping gel. But the other thing you can use is also just to take a little bit of your paste. All right, and so you just take a little bit of paste here like this. And then what you would do there is you just would add a little bit of egg white to this. And then taking your little spatula. So similar like when you watch my antler tutorial, I do this just with the 50/50 or modified paste. But you're just going to just soften down some. But see what this will do, this will make a sort of a strong glue. So rather than using egg white or edible glue, which really doesn't have a lot of structural strength, this is going to be sort of more like a cement type of concept. But as I said, you could use piping gel. You could also use the Super Bond. Anyway, so you take a little bit of this. You see this, you're just going to just spread onto the, spread over here. Of course, you can just wipe the molds. Now remember, the molds can also be put in a dishwasher as well. So you can put these in the dishwasher, but you can also just wash them. As I said, just let them air dry or again food dehydrated. If you put this in a little container, if you're making several of these, you've of course got this to use for filling in. And this is your dry one, okay? So your dry one would then sit on top. You see, you really can press. Now we can really press well to lodge those two together. You see how it's almost going to sort of sit into that part there. And when you flex the mold, you pop this out. Just going to just bring this together here at the top. All right, and you're just going to use your, just going to mold this around here like so. And just at the top there where the seam is, now you see how because this one here is dry, it looks a little bit lighter. But this will just go together beautifully. Okay, and then you can just use your finger here and just smooth down there. And your little companion tool, just going to use that. You can use that on the seam. And then again, we're just going to now continue these little small holes here. So these are just going to go around your edge there like that. So you see that will continue the, almost looks a little bit like, I can remember as a child playing with these like little pepper pots because they almost have the little seeds inside them. You can just use this to smooth this off, all right? But just as I said, once you get that there, this will just go together and it's going to sit together perfectly. All right, and then you can, if you needed to, when it dries, if there are any little areas, you could also take some of that softened paste and you could just fill in between there as well. All right, and that's sort of how we would make the seed head. But remember, it looks different color because obviously this part is soft, this is still wet, this part is dry, okay? And then when you do the cream one, you see cream one would be done exactly the same. And then this is going to be dusted with a sort of almost like a cappuccino-y cream color. I'm going to speckle this with some brown so it looks like a dried seed head, which you often get in the autumn time. And remember, I said a lot of the time you see those painted metallic colors at Christmas time. So those are the seed heads. So we have here your seed heads here, and so we're going to be showing the coloring in the end. In my next segment coming up, I'm going to show you how to do the poppy leaves, and this will be the final component for the traditional poppy spray. Now moving on to the final element, the foliage or leaves. So here we have obviously on the poppy mold, there is a small, a medium and a large leaf, okay? Obviously these are all made in basically the same way, just using different amounts of paste. So starting off with the small leaf, I'm going to start off with that. And that's actually going to be a number 5 small, okay? So quite tiny, so that wants to be a number 5 that just goes through the hole. And of course, if you were making, say, 6 of these, you just would measure off your other balls of paste. Now, when we do this, we're going to again condition this. And this is just in the normal green. Remember, the only part that I've done with a paler green is actually the seed pod. Okay, now you're going to just roll this into a little sausage. Okay, and this wants to be about 2/3 of the length of the mold. Okay, so it wants to be about 2/3 of the length of the cavity. Again, just going to put just a little tiny bit of vegetable shortenings, very, very tiny amount of fat into the mold. So I've pretty much done that on all of the I didn't do it for the center mold part of the mold, but on everything else I have, okay? And then just going to use just a little cornstarch, corn flour onto that. I'm going to place that into the mold here. I'm just going to press this in with your finger, and then you're just going to work this into the mold. And this particular mold is like some of the other Flower Pro, like for example the holly. So you're just going to work that into the little cavities that you have. So you just have those little, almost like serrations on the edge. Okay, so you can work that in with your Dresden. Dresden tool is this wider end. This is called like a Dresden veining tool, is what we typically use. I'm going to use a 28 gauge wire. Okay, so I'm going to just dip this into egg white, and I'm going to take the wire and I'm going to insert this into the ridge, and it's going to go about 2/3 of the way up the leaf. All right, so it wants to go to about here, a little further than normal, because especially when we talk about the medium and large, because of the, say, it's like the daisy leaf, similar as well, about 2/3, because we want it to go into sort of, because this area of the leaf, especially on the medium one, is a little bit shallow here, so not so wide, so you want to make sure the wire goes a little bit further. Now this is an optional step. You can just leave it just like this with a plain back. If you do want to vein the back, all right, there, this is my poinsettia, my Flower Pro poinsettia, which a lot of you have already. And so I'm just going to use this poinsettia back to vein this. But as I said, this is optional. There are other veiners as well you could use, but as I said, this is the one that sort of is most suited to this type of leaf. So you see how this is going to give you the central ridge. And remember, you just line this up so the wire comes out. As Flower Pro grows, we will be integrating different things in different ways. Like earlier on in the poppy, I showed you using the back petal veiner from the sunflower, the ultimate sunflower and daisy mold. So these are things as your collection will grow, we will be showing you how to use things in different ways and integrating them into different products. So you're just going to take this out of the mold, okay? And then we're going to pop this onto, so you're going to just use your little pad, okay, soft side, and I'm going to use my you can use your veining tool, which is the thin end here, and then we're just going to just use the veining tool, just going to press onto each of the little serrations. And then you can also do this with the companion tool as well. So you can just take your companion tool and just press that onto the edge. And then we're just going to just pinch that slightly and just hollow the edge of the around the companion tool like that. Now this little tiny fine leaf would be the type of one I use for example small poppies coming down the stem, but also when we do like the California style poppy. All right, these will just dry in a natural foam former like this. So this will give you how your, and this, if your wire is a little bit visible, just pinch that just a little tiny bit, and that obviously is going to be your small leaf. Now the medium leaf, I'm going to show you that and then just explain the large one. So when we do the medium size leaf, we're going to use a number 6 size. So this is going to be a number 6 regular size. So remember, we just used the number 5 small. Now we have 1/3 below, 2/3 above. Again, we put a little bit of vegetable shortening into there. Just a little bit easier to see on this larger one. Going to roll that into a sausage here. Your sausage wants to be about 2/3 of the length of the mold. Okay, you're going to press it in with your cosmetic sponge and really almost like work it to the edge like this. Okay, and then you're going to just finish that off with your Dresden tool. So you see how then I can just push this into here, then push this into the edges with your Dresden tool. Just make sure you stay within the perimeter of the mold. Then we're going to take a wire here. This is 28 gauge white wire. Okay, so both the small and the medium leaves will have 28 gauge wires on them. Just going to thread this into here. Remember, if your wire is a little bit visible, just use your fingers and just press this over the top. Okay. And you can make a little ridge, you know, like I did, you know, like when I'm showing on the petals. You can also roll from here to here and make a little ridge. So if you're having issues getting the wire in, create like a little vein. That will also help as well, okay? And then you're going to take the back veiner. Remember, this is not, this is an optional step. Just present that on the top. Just going to press this on the top here, like so. So you see how you're going to get your nice veining on the back here, okay? So then we're going to just flex the veiner. All right, it's going to take the leaf out. Now, if you get any like little membrane in between the petals, which when you sometimes do small leaves like this, like when we do the ferns, just press in with your veining tool like so, okay? And then you're going to put this onto the soft side of the pad. And then I said I'm going to use my veining tool just gently Just going to work from the outside to the inside like so. Where I said you can also do this with the needle tool end, just very, very gently. Generally, if you were going to use the needle tool end, I would do that on a cosmetic sponge or on a sponge which is a little bit softer. And you see these both the techniques you can use for this. And then we're going to hollow the base of the leaf. All right, and see the wire goes about here. And then you can actually take the wire and just bend it. So just give your leaf a little bit of shape like this, you see. So you're actually bending with the wire. And because 28 gauge wire is nice and soft, and you're then going to just sort of dry your leaf like this, okay? And that will be how you would do the medium-sized leaf. Now the large leaf is going to be done in exactly the same way. The basic difference is we use a number 7 small. So remember, you've got 5 small for the small leaf, number 6 regular for the medium leaf, and then a 7 small. So it wants to be a 7 that goes through the hole. And then the other difference is when you do the large size leaf, you would use a 26 gauge wire, okay? So because you can see it's a little bit bigger. So obviously this wire is fine to support these 2 smaller ones, but it would be too soft for this bigger leaf. And this would be done in exactly the same way. So that is how we will do the foliage for the poppy. So obviously poppy all has similar leaves. They do vary a little bit, and as I said, but this will give you a sort of range of leaves you could use for pretty much any poppy. You can also use, for example, on my ultimate sunflower and daisy, the daisy leaf, there are some poppies that have that sort of more of that daisy leaf shape. So as I said, if you have that set, you could also make leaves for your poppy with that. So next step is going to be the coloring. That's really where everything is going to come to life, and then the final assembly. So I'll see you real soon. Welcome back. In this section, I'm going to show you first of all how to tape the base of the components, including the petals, the leaves, and also the dried seed heads. Then we're going to move on to the fun part, which is going to be the coloring, which really brings the flowers to life. Now, once everything is dried, so these are obviously the larger petals. And remember, this is the sort of way I generally would dry petals for an English field poppy or wild poppy. And these ones, for example, are the ones I show drying in the foil former. Also remember, this is the one that is just in the red, and then this is the slightly orangey red. So you can see the contrast to the color here in the camera. Okay, so once everything is dry, I'm going to just take those off of your foam. We're going to use quarter width tape. So quarter width tape is obviously cut with a tape cutter, which would divide it into quarters, or with a pair of scissors. So if you have half width tape, you can just cut it in half with a pair of scissors. We use quarter width tape because poppy doesn't have a calyx, all right? So in flowers that don't have calyxes, we don't want to make the flower too bulky on the base of the flower under the stamens. And so we're going to use quarter width tapes to not add a lot of bulk. Now, when we tape these, just like I've shown in many of my other videos, you're going to start off about 2.5 centimeters down, about approximately 1 inch. You're going to go around with your floral tape. All right, so just going to go around a couple of times with your floral tape. And if you're if your fingers are a little sticky or your tape's a bit dry, you can also use a little corn flour on your fingers as well. That will help, all right, just to get started. And then you slide this up to the bottom of the petal, and you're just going to come down ultimately about 2.5 centimeters, about 1 inch, and break off. We don't need to tape all the way down, okay? And you would do this on all of your components. You see, you just sort of start off, just slide this up to the bottom, then come down, as I said, like this. I'm going to do this also on the leaves. Because again, poppy stems, you know, the actual stem, it doesn't have a calyx, and then on the leaves, because they're all joined on the bottom or partial way down the stem, again, we're using quarter width tape so we don't add too much bulk. So those are the components. Obviously, the center is already wired. The buds are already wired, both the open and closed buds. And then the last part we're going to move on to is actually going to be on the seed pods. Now, remember, the seed pods are nice to use, like a lot of times, sometimes in a painting of poppies, or for example, if you had a silk flower arrangement of poppies, you'll sometimes have the real dried seed heads. Remember, this comes later in the year, because the season of the poppy, because basically once the poppy dies, all the nutrients go in here, just like in a rose hip. Rose hips turn orange and red during the winter time and during the autumn time. And this is the poppy seed heads, all right? So of course, when it's sort of late autumn time, they will be a green color like this. And then a lot of people pick them and then dry them. And then when they dry, they turn into this sort of basically like a dried flower arrangement color. So they're going to be this sort of really dried out look, almost like a creamy brown color. So anyway, so when you do these, you're going to use, because underneath this, it has a little tiny sort of hip part. little bit like a rose. So we're actually going to use some half-width floral tape here. And with the half-width floral tape, so what I'm going to do here is just going to take this and I'm going to go just underneath. So I'm going to just start my tape directly underneath the little seed head. And I'm going to go around 10 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, because it has this little, almost like a little ovary on the bottom. So go around 10 times. Then you're going to come down and then I'm going to go around 40 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So what I'm doing is building up this bulk. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 40. All right, and then just going to come down like that. So you see what you've actually done here is you created like this little, almost like a rose tip. Now you can make this with paste, all right, but I found actually floral tape is better because it's more fluid, it looks part of it. I take then a pair of pliers, and with my pair of pliers, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just squash this because you actually want to create a little bit more of a, almost like a ring around here. So using your pair of pliers like this, just going to squash this floral tape. Remember, this is for 40 times we went round on the spot. Now don't worry if this is not perfect because we're going to cover over this again. And you see how you build up this little piece here. And then you'll go back with your floral tape and just start, and you're going to just come over the top of that. And you're going to go back, and let's do this 3 times. And I'm going to come back again over the top. So what this is going to do is almost going to put like a skin over the top of it. So you see how it's not going to be so, it won't be messy looking, and you're just going to just smooth that with your fingers. And you see how that's going to create that back part, okay? And then when you do that on the white seed head, you do exactly the same, but you're going to use on the cream white floral tape. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Remember, directly below. Then you're going to come down, and then you're going to go 40 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 40. Okay, and just showing you in both ways so you can sort of see the difference. It's a little bit easier to actually see on the white because it's a, you see how I'm just pinching with my pliers. So you see how you're building this almost like a ring around the, let's say, don't worry too much about if you mess it up a little bit because this is going to be covered. Okay, then you're going to come back with your floral tape. With your floral tape, you're going to start. And you're just going to go over the top of that. You're going to come down just a little way, and then you're going to go back up 2, and then down again 3. So you're just going to put like a layer of floral tape over the top. And you're just going to just smooth that with your fingers. And remember, with floral tape as well, you can use your scissors. So you can actually use your scissors to smooth the floral tape. So if you have like little lumps in your floral tape, you can actually use scissors there just to sort of help blend that. Which again, I've shown on some of my other videos. Okay, so those are now ready for coloring. So we've got the components all basically wired and obviously taped here because we would do this prior to dusting on top. So in the next section, I'm going to come back and show you how we do actually the coloring on the all of the components. So see you soon.